Emma-Sophie walked onto the America's Got Talent stage with a mixture of nervousness and hope glowing in her eyes. At just 11 years old, the Filipina girl looked tiny on the massive stage, but there was something steady about her, something quiet but powerful, like a small flame refusing to go out in a storm. Simon Cowell leaned forward, studying her with that familiar mixture of curiosity and challenge. "What will you sing?" he asked. Emma-Sophie held the microphone with both hands and softly answered, "A song for my mother." The studio instantly fell into a deeper silence, and even the audience seemed to sense that something special was about to happen. The lights dimmed, a single spotlight circled around her, and she took a slow breath that trembled just slightly. The first note was like crystal breaking the silence, pure, soft, and incredibly controlled. You could see surprise flash across the judges' faces because no one expected such a delicate yet powerful voice from such a young child. People in the audience leaned forward, drawn in by the sincerity in her voice. As she moved into the second verse, her emotions melted into each note, carrying both love and longing. The song spoke about distance, sacrifice, and a mother's endless support, something many viewers immediately connected with. Emma-Sophie closed her eyes while singing one of the high phrases, and it was as if the entire theater held its breath with her. Halfway through the song, her voice grew stronger, fuller, as though she had found courage hiding inside the music itself. Heidi covered her mouth, eyes widening in disbelief at the purity of Emma-Sophie's tone. Sophia whispered something to Howie, both clearly stunned by the vocal technique coming from a child this young. When the chorus arrived, Emma-Sophie lifted her head and let out a soaring high note that felt like it filled every inch of the room. You could see the goosebumps on people's arms, and even Simon's expression shifted, his eyebrows lifted slightly, the corner of his mouth twitched, and he gave that familiar nod he reserves for truly gifted singers. As the final line of the song floated into the air, she held the last note longer than anyone expected, sustaining it with perfect breath control. The moment the note ended, the theater exploded. The entire audience rose to their feet instantly, shouting, clapping, cheering with a force that seemed to overwhelm Emma-Sophie. She blinked in surprise, then smiled shyly as tears filled her eyes. Simon stood too, slowly, deliberately, clapping with a proud look on his face. When the ovation finally settled, he spoke first. "That," he said, pointing gently toward her, "was perfection. Absolutely stunning. You have a gift, and today, you showed the entire world." The other judges repeated the same admiration. Heidi said her voice was angelic and emotionally honest. Sophia praised her bravery for singing something so personal. Howie called her a little superstar with a giant voice. With 4 enthusiastic yeses, Emma-Sophie moved forward in the competition, leaving the stage with her heart full, her dream alive, and the world already talking about the tiny Filipina girl who delivered a performance no one would forget. After the viral success of her audition, Emma-Sophie returned to the AGT stage for her second performance with a newfound quiet confidence. The theater buzzed with anticipation, everyone wanted to know whether the young Filipina singer could rise even higher than before. Backstage, she admitted feeling nervous, but she also felt grateful. Millions of people around the world had watched her audition, and she wanted to make her family and her country proud once again. When the doors opened and she stepped onto the stage, the audience erupted into applause. Even Simon gave her a rare warm smile as she took her place at the microphone. The music began with soft piano notes, and when she started singing, the first words were gentle, like a whisper carried by emotion. But this time her voice had something new, strength. She sang with a maturity that made people forget she was only 11. Every note was deliberate, every breath perfectly measured. As she climbed into the first chorus, she released a confident, bold vibrato that sent audible gasps through the theater. Her tone was richer than before, shaped by hours of practice and the weight of her dreams. She gripped the microphone stand, connecting deeply with the lyrics, and her eyes shimmered under the stage lights as she poured emotion into every phrase. Sophia leaned toward Heidi, both visibly impressed. "She sounds like a tiny superstar," Sophia whispered, her voice full of amazement. Heidi nodded, tapping her chest as if to say she could feel the performance in her heart. Even Howie, usually playful, looked sincerely moved. But the most noticeable reaction came from Simon. He didn't blink. He watched her with intense focus, clearly struck by the growth between her first audition and this moment. When Emma-Sophie reached the highest note in the bridge, she didn't just hit it, she owned it. The note rang out, controlled and steady, rising with a level of power far beyond her age. The crowd rose to their feet before the song even ended, unable to contain their excitement. Emma-Sophie finished her final note with a graceful fade, lowering the mic slowly as the theater exploded into applause once again. Tears filled her eyes as she looked out at the crowd cheering for her with overwhelming love. She brought both hands to her chest, humbled by the standing ovation that lasted longer than her audition applause. Simon lifted his hand to quiet the audience, and when he spoke, his words carried genuine admiration. "You were born to sing," he told her. "What you just did, that's what greatness looks like." Heidi praised her vocal control. Sophia admired her emotional power. Howie said she had proven herself as someone who deserves to go far in the competition. With 4 yeses once again and an audience chanting her name, Emma-Sophie stepped off the stage smiling, knowing she had just delivered another unforgettable performance, one that brought her closer to becoming the young Filipina superstar the world was beginning to see in her. The third episode of Emma-Sophie's AGT journey began with a soft emotional tone. Before she even stepped onto the stage, the show aired a heartfelt behind-the-scenes package that revealed the deeper story behind her voice. Viewers watched footage of her small neighborhood in the Philippines, where Emma-Sophie grew up singing on the porch, using a plastic toy microphone because her family couldn't afford a real one. Her parents worked hard, her father doing odd jobs, her mother working overseas, and their sacrifices shaped the passion in her voice. In the video, she said, "I sing because it helps me feel close to my mom. Even when we're far apart, I feel like she hears me through my songs." Those words alone softened the hearts of everyone watching. You could see the judges looking emotional even before she appeared on stage. When the curtains opened and Emma-Sophie walked into the spotlight, her expression wasn't shy this time, it was focused, glowing with purpose. She held the microphone with both hands, took a deep breath, and nodded toward the music director. The first notes began, a blend of Filipino and English lyrics woven into a gentle ballad meant to honor every child who dreams big despite life's challenges. Her voice entered softly, like a quiet prayer, but with a depth that brought instant goosebumps. She didn't just sing the words, she lived them. Every expression on her face carried meaning, every breath carried memory. As she reached the first chorus, her tone expanded, full of richness that felt far too powerful for an 11-year-old. People in the audience began wiping tears. The melody lifted into a high, tender line, and she delivered it with emotional precision, her voice trembling slightly but never losing control. The song blended beautiful Tagalog phrases with English lines of hope, a tribute to her heritage and her journey. Viewers who had never heard Filipino lyrics before felt the emotion even without understanding every word. Music needed no translation. Simon glanced at the other judges, clearly moved. Heidi pressed a hand to her heart, her eyes already glassy. Sophia breathed out softly, whispering, "Wow," even before the song reached its peak. When Emma-Sophie stepped forward into the bridge, the emotions deepened. She lifted her eyes toward the balcony and sang as though she were singing directly to her mother across the ocean. Her voice climbed into a breathtaking high note, long, crystal clear, steady, and the theater seemed frozen in awe. As the final line faded into silence, the reaction was immediate. The audience rose all at once, cheering, clapping, and calling her name. Even people backstage were crying. Emma-Sophie blinked, overwhelmed, and put a hand over her mouth as tears finally spilled down her cheeks. Sophia stood first, clapping with genuine admiration. Heidi was visibly emotional. Howie leaned forward, shaking his head in disbelief, and Simon gave her a rare, soft smile few contestants ever received. Howie spoke first, his voice gentle. "You didn't just sing tonight, you touched every single one of us." Heidi said her voice was filled with pure heart. Sophia praised her for being a tiny girl with a gigantic message. When Simon finally spoke, he said, "You made everyone feel something real. That's what makes a star." With 4 yeses and a theater full of emotional fans, Emma-Sophie walked off stage knowing she had just created one of the most unforgettable AGT moments of the season. For her 4th AGT appearance, Emma-Sophie faced a moment unlike any before. Backstage, she waited nervously as Simon Cowell approached her with a surprising request. He told her he wanted her to sing a new song, one she had never performed publicly and had only a day to practice. It was a challenging piece with difficult high notes, emotional phrasing, and sections that required absolute vocal control. Most contestants would have panicked, but Emma-Sophie simply nodded, her voice soft but steady as she said, "I'll try my best." The challenge alone set the tone for what would become a defining episode in her journey. When she stepped onto the stage, the atmosphere felt heavier, more intense. The judges looked curious, the crowd eager to see how she would handle something so unexpected. The lights dimmed to a deep blue, the orchestra prepared, and Emma-Sophie closed her eyes as the first chord began. Immediately, her expression shifted. She wasn't nervous, she was focused. Her first note came out smooth and beautifully controlled, surprising even those who already believed in her. The melody carried a sense of longing, and she shaped each line with emotion well beyond her age. As the song progressed, the difficulty increased. The verses required softness and restraint, while the chorus asked for strength, precision, and a mature belt. Emma-Sophie handled each transition flawlessly, moving from whisper-like phrases to powerful sustained notes with breathtaking skill. The audience stayed silent in awe, hanging on every moment. Even Simon, who had given her the challenge, seemed shocked by how effortlessly she had risen to meet it. Halfway through the performance, the song demanded its most difficult section, a series of escalating high notes that required technique and bravery. Emma-Sophie stepped forward, lifted her chin, and delivered each note with haunting beauty. One of the highest notes rang through the theater, so pure and perfectly placed that people gasped out loud. The camera caught Simon exhaling sharply, as if he had just witnessed something extraordinary. By the time she reached the final chorus, Emma-Sophie no longer looked like a contestant, she looked like a young professional artist owning the biggest stage of her life. She poured emotion into every word. Her eyes glistened as she delivered the final soaring note, holding it long enough to send a shiver through the entire crowd. When the music stopped, there was a moment of stunned silence before the theater erupted into cheers, louder than ever before. Heidi stood, clapping with an almost proud expression. Sophia shook her head in disbelief. Howie pointed at her and said something the cameras barely caught. "Wow. Just, wow." Then all eyes turned to Simon. He stood slowly, clapping with a smile that was half amazement and half admiration. When he spoke, he said, "I took a risk giving you that song. You took a bigger risk accepting it. And you turned it into your best performance yet."